So our pipeline now works end-to-end, but that doesn't mean that there isn't room for improvement. In this module, we're going to implement some improvements both to the candidate selection and to the image generation steps in order to add more variety. So let's start with our candidate selection. If you recall, in the deep dive step, we currently naively look at the 3 candidates that we just generated and pick the one with the highest raw score. And that's the score that was generated by the LLM at the time it generated the ideas themselves in the synthesis step. And that's a helpful starting point, but we also shouldn't put too much stock into that one number. So here we're looking at our database of ideas that we've generated so far. It's only 18 ideas at this point. And I went ahead and sorted this by score. And you'll see a pretty clear pattern here where the winning candidates are pretty much all meta trends and a few friction points. So down here, we get one rabbit hole idea, and then we get a whole bunch more friction point ideas. So if we always naively pick the top scoring candidate, it's almost always going to be a meta trend or maybe a friction point idea. That's not going to be super interesting in the long run. So we need to force a little bit more variety here, and in particular, variety of different archetypes. There are 2 things that we need to do to achieve this. So first off, we need to broaden the candidate pool. Rather than just looking at the 3 candidates we just generated, we're going to take a 4-day window and look at all the candidates that we generated during that period. Very similar to what we're doing when we select the article insights that feed into the synthesis step. Because right now it's actually kind of wasteful. Like every time the pipeline runs, we generate 3 ideas and then we immediately throw 2 of them away and only pick 1 of them. So we can do better than that. We can look at the whole 4-day window, load all of those candidates, then apply a ranking function to determine the best candidate to develop into a business model and a newsletter post next. So what does that ranking function look like? Here's how we're going to go about this. Instead of just the raw score, there are going to be 4 elements feeding into this candidate score. So we still keep the raw score as one of those elements. That's what we're starting with. Then we want to reward variety. So sort of a fatigue multiplier, if you will. For each candidate in our pool, we'll basically compare it to the recent archetypes, the one that we published yesterday, the one we published the day before yesterday, and so on. And depending on how recently we published a candidate with that same archetype, we apply a penalty in the form of a multiplier to the score. We also have a freshness factor here, so an age decay. This one is less critical, but basically the more timely an idea is, the better. So we'll slightly reward more recent ideas, and an idea from 3 or 4 days ago is still completely relevant. It just gets a very slight penalty. Finally, we're going to enforce originality by adding a similarity multiplier. That's going to be the most complex step here. This is where we're going to be dealing with embeddings and cosine similarity and so on. And this is to make sure that we don't publish any ideas that are too similar to another idea that we just published recently. So for now, let's leave that one aside, and we'll begin with the first 2 here. So the variety and freshness multipliers. And in the end, we multiply all of this, get a new score for each of the candidates in the pool, and then we can simply sort them all based on the highest final score and end up with our list of candidates and then pick the first one.